Hey everybody, welcome back to Follow Me 11B. Discussions on current events, macroeconomics, and freedom and liberty from a veteran's perspective. Today I would like to discuss President Joe Biden's selection for replacement of the retiring Justice Stephen Breyer of the United States Supreme Court and Joe Biden's pick of Ketanji Brown Jackson. Who is she? Is she qualified? And if she is confirmed for Justice of the Supreme Court, what can we expect? So let's go straight to an article I came across on The Hill. It's by Jonathan Turley from February 26, 2022, entitled Wink and a Nod Nomination. Who really is Ketanji Brown Jackson? For many liberal groups, Ketanji Brown Jackson is a supreme deliverable by President Biden. Activist groups have pushed her nomination to the Supreme Court while opposing consideration of fellow shortlister, District Judge J. Michelle Childs. These groups clearly did not like Childs and her more moderate take on legal issues. Yet the interesting question is, what did they see in Judge Jackson that made her the preferred choice? It seems to be widely understood but barely discussed. The White House announced its selection of the D.C. Circuit Judge even as Ukrainians were fighting street by street for their freedom last Friday. The now for something completely different moment was quickly overshadowed by images of agony abroad. Biden's unnecessary, unprecedented pledge to consider only black females for a vacancy on the court, the very type of threshold criteria the court has declared unconstitutional or unlawful for schools or businesses. Jackson herself previously rejected Biden's premise for imposing his threshold racial and gender exclusion, stating during her appellate confirmation hearing that, quote, "I don't think that race plays a role in the kind of judge that I have been and would be," close quote. With a sterling academic and professional resume, she deserved a much better framing and timing for her nomination. Activist groups such as Demand Justice pushed her nomination while opposing Judge Childs, who they considered too moderate and tough on crime. This concerted opposition campaign, which included Our Revolution group, aligned with Senator Bernie Sanders, independent of Vermont, painted Childs as an anti-union and pro-employer too. Oh no, not pro-employer. NBC News declared that Jackson fits well with the Democratic Party and the progressive movement's agenda, end quote. Yet the confirmation process is designed to guarantee that we do not have the wink and a nod nominations where agendas are to be fulfilled but not discussed. Jackson has an extremely limited written record to review, something considered an advantage for a nominee. She did write several long opinions as a district court judge, but has only one published opinion as an appellate judge. That opinion, a win for unions against a federal agency, was released roughly 24 hours before her nomination. Liberals want a justice who is willing to expand the meaning of the Constitution without constitutional amendments. President Biden stressed that his nominee must follow a living Constitution approach, including a broad view of unenumerated rights. When asked if she supported such an approach, Childs answered no. Jackson, in contrast, has been far more obscure and conflicted in her response. When she was nominated for the district court, Jackson answered no to that question. However, when nominated for the appellate court and widely discussed as a future Supreme Court nominee, she became more evasive and frankly baffling in her answer. She told the Senate that she simply did not have experience with such interpretations as a judge. It was a bizarre response since the question concerned her judicial philosophy. After all, Jackson has a distinguished academic background and a long career in legal practice. She is clearly familiar with this core concept of liberal constitution interpretation. This is where it gets really weird. Her answer also made little sense, since she had no difficulty in responding to the question in her prior confirmation. When again pressed on the issue, Jackson's position became unintelligible. I gotta get comfortable for this. This is hard to read. It's like a tongue twister. All right, here we go. When again pressed on the issue, Jackson's position became unintelligible. She told the Senate that she was, quote, bound by the methods of the constitutional interpretation that the Supreme Court has adopted, and that I have a duty not to opine on the Supreme Court's chosen methodology or suggest that I would undertake to interpret the text of the Constitution in any manner other than as the Supreme Court has directed. Close quote. The answer was mystifying. Yeah, she is bound to follow the precedents of the Supreme Court, but she is allowed to have her own philosophy on constitutional interpretation, and other judges have answered the same question. What is known is that Jackson has faced pushback for exceeding her constitutionally or statutorily defined roles in cases. For example, in 2019, she wrote a lengthy opinion in the Make the Road New York versus McLean in favor of immigration groups challenging the Department of Homeland Security's expansion of the expedited removal process to the statutory limit. Jackson surprisingly ruled that she had authority to enjoin the policy despite a federal law stating the question was left to the, quote, sole and unreviewable discretion of the agency, unquote. The D.C. Circuit reversed Judge Jackson as exercising considerable judicial overreach. Judge Jackson also was accused of judicial overreach in American Federation Government Employees versus Trump in 2018, when she stopped the Trump administration from implementing provisions limiting the ability of federal workers' unions to collectively bargain. Noting that Jackson was a prospective choice for Supreme Court, the Washington Post heralded the ruling as a major victory for unions. However, a unanimous ruling by the D.C. Circuit held that Jackson lacked jurisdiction to decide the case because the statute clearly mandates such challenges must be brought first to the agency in process, and that judicial review is then available in the courts of appeals. Those reversals evidence a more fluid approach to statutory interpretation that even more liberal judges found to be beyond the pale. Jackson's hearing will be far more important than your standard, kabuki theater, because of the lack of information about her views on key issues. She has a fraction of the written record of nominees such as Barrett or Justice Neil Gorsuch. In the end, Judge Jackson is likely to be confirmed, but her confirmation should be based on advice and consent, not a wink and a nod. So again, Jonathan Turley was the writer, Shapiro Professor of Public Interest Law at George Washington University. So, who is she? I think we answered that question. Is she qualified? I think she's qualified. Obviously, she's got many years of experience as a judge, as a lawyer, as a public defender. What I am most concerned about in this, and I think others are probably concerned about this nomination, is that Joe Biden was specifically looking for a nominee that, how did he put it? He was looking for a nominee that would follow a living Constitution approach, including a broad view of unenumerated rights. So, as opposed to like Comey Barrett, that's a strict constitutionalist. That's the Constitution was written, and this is what it means, exactly what it says on paper, versus the living Constitution approach, which says, the Second Amendment says the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. However, in the living interpretation way of looking at things, for instance, they would say the Second Amendment was never the framers and founders of the country who wrote the Constitution would have never didn't have any idea that we would have weapons like we do today. So therefore, using the living Constitution approach, they were talking about muskets and one-shot, two-shot type of weaponry, not automatic weapons, semi-automatic weapons, and so forth. So therefore, we must ban certain weapons, as an example. That could be extrapolated into the First Amendment, perhaps when we're discussing things like social media. But in my opinion, Constitution is what it is. It's a shield against politicians and other people, businesses and others trying to take rights away from other people. If we didn't have the Constitution, this country would be a lot different, especially right now with what we're going through with the pandemic and so forth, as you can see evidenced in countries like Australia, Canada, some countries of Europe, etc. However, that being said, I believe this is a qualified nominee, and the only thing I don't like about this whole nomination is that they kind of tilted the scales in the favor of a certain group that if you do that in any other scenario, in business, in school, as far as bringing, hiring faculty or even bringing in students, it can be illegal. However, for some reason, when the president does it, it's perfectly fine to disregard everyone else other than a certain race or a certain gender. So it just leaves a poor taste in a lot of people's mouths, including mine. Also, I think it's how did this article end? Well, her confirmation should be based on advice and consent. That's what he said. I think it should have been. I think that he's done a disservice to this nominee by just saying we're going to take all the other nominees and qualified people and we're just going to push them aside and we're just going to slide this small pool of nominees in for my consideration because I made a promise during the campaign to my supporters. So I'm not and again I've discussed this on a previous video. This might be the best nominee. But when you push 90% of the nominees, the nominee pool, out of the way, and you just keep the 10% that look a certain way or are a certain gender, etc., well, it's kind of hard to say if you're really, truly getting the best nominee. It's going to be a different looking court, but that shouldn't matter. If she's a qualified candidate and following the law, it shouldn't matter what you look like. And I think that even Judge Jackson would agree with that. But I would love to hear what you think. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Follow me 11B, like us, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and also at The Real. Follow me 11B on Instagram. We will see you all on the next video.